Welcome to this edition of News Today, a series in which we discuss and briefly analyze the important news of the day. Let's have a look at today's main headlines. The Supreme Court says that the declaration of state emergency and subsequent actions of the President should have reasonable nexus. The Rajya Sabha passes the bill for the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners. 3 bills have been reintroduced to replace the Indian Penal Code 1860, Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and the Indian Evidence Act 1872. The Department of Personnel and Training issues guidelines on acceptance of awards by the government servants. The International Union for Conservation of Nature releases an updated red list of the threatened species. The United Nations Office of Drugs and Crime report says that the Golden Triangle opium economy has seen a steady growth in 2023. Starting with the first main news, the Supreme Court has said that the declaration of state emergency and subsequent actions of the President should have reasonable nexus. Relying on the judgment in the S.R. Bomai case, the court, while hearing the revocation of Article 370, also held that the actions of President during a state emergency were open to judicial scrutiny. Before we go any further, let's see what the judgment in the S.R. Bomai case was about. In this case, a 9-judge bench of the Supreme Court unanimously held that the President's proclamation under Article 356 can be subject to judicial review on grounds of illegality, malified extraneous considerations, abuse of power, or fraud. The verdict also made parliamentary approval necessary for imposing the President's rule. Coming back to the recent ruling, the Supreme Court also observed that the court ought not to review every decision made by the President during state emergency proclamation. This is because most of the actions taken by the President for state's interim governance can be reversed by the state government when it returns to power. Also, the legislations enacted by the Parliament on behalf of the state legislature could subsequently be repealed by the state legislature when such emergency ceases to operate. Before we conclude this news, let's understand about the state emergency under Article 356. The Article 356 allows the President, when convinced that the state government cannot function as per the Constitution, to take over all or any functions of the state government or powers of the governor or any other state authority other than the legislature. It also allows the President to declare that the powers of the state legislature shall be exercised by the Parliament. It can also make necessary provisions for the proclamation's objectives, like suspension of certain constitutional provisions related to state bodies. However, these powers are not automatically invoked, and the President must stipulate the scope of the powers exercised by the Union when such proclamation is issued. Moving on to the next news, the Rajya Sabha has passed the bill for the appointment of Chief Election Commissioner and Election Commissioners. The Chief Election Commissioner and other election commissioners appointment, condition of service and term of office bill 2023 will replace the Election Commission condition of service of election commissioners and transaction of business act 1991. The bill provides for the appointment, salary and removal of the Chief Election Commissioners or CEC and the Election Commissioners or EC. Let's have a look at the key highlights of the bill. For appointment, the bill says that the CEC and the ECs will be appointed by the President upon the recommendation of a selection committee, which will consist of the Prime Minister, a Union Cabinet Minister, and leader of opposition or leader of the largest opposition party in Lok Sabha. Also, there will be a search committee headed by the Law Minister, which would propose a panel of names to the selection committee. The allowances and the service conditions of the CEC and the ECs would be on par with those of the Supreme Court judges. For removal, the CEC removal should follow the process akin to the removal of Supreme Court judges. Also, the ECs cannot be removed from the office without the CEC's recommendation. The bill also provides for the protection of CEC and ECs. Herein, if they are giving orders during duty, the court cannot take action against them. In another news, 3 bills have been reintroduced to replace the Indian Penal Code 1860, Code of Criminal Procedure 1973 and the Indian Evidence Act 1872. The new draft legislations incorporate the recommendations of the department-related Parliamentary Standing Committee on Home Affairs. Let's have a look at the new bills one by one. starting with the Bharatiya Nyaya Sanhita Bill 2023. It seeks to replace the Indian Penal Code. It streamlines provisions related to offences and penalties. It also proposes to provide for the first time community service as one of the punishments for petty offences. It also adds new offences on acts of armed rebellion, subversive activities, separatist activities, or endangering sovereignty or unity and integrity of India. The second bill is the Bharatiya Nagrik Suraksha Sanhita Bill 2023. It seeks to replace the CRPC. Herein, the summary trial has been made mandatory for petty and less serious cases. It also provides the use of technology and forensic sciences in the investigation of crime. Plus, specific timelines have been prescribed for the time-bound investigation, trial, and pronouncement of judgments. Also, where punishment is 7 years or more, victims shall be given an opportunity of being heard before the withdrawal of the case. Additionally, the magisterial system has also been streamlined. The third bill is the Bharatiya Sakshya Bill 2023. It seeks to replace the Indian Evidence Act. Herein, the bill allows the admissibility of electronic or digital record as evidence. It also seeks to expand scope of secondary evidence to include copies made from the original by mechanical processes. Moving on to the next news, guidelines on acceptance of awards by government servants have been issued by the Department of Personnel and Training. These instructions have been issued regarding the acceptance of awards by government servants from private bodies and institutes in accordance with the Rule 14 of the Central Civil Services Conduct Rules 1964. These rules govern the conduct of government employees in India. Let's have a look at the key provisions of the guidelines. The guidelines say that the awards given by the private bodies or organizations may be accepted only with prior approval of a competent authority. This competent authority would be the secretary of the concerned ministry or department. Also, the competent authority may grant approval subject to the certain conditions like award should not have monetary component and the credentials of private bodies should be trustworthy. So what is the significance of these guidelines? Firstly, ethical conduct. These guidelines will ensure that the government servants uphold ethical standards in their conduct. Secondly, preventing conflicts of interest. This is because awards or gifts received by government servants could potentially lead to conflict of interest. Thirdly, transparency and accountability. By having clear rules, public and other stakeholders can be assured that decisions made by the government officials are not influenced by personal benefits. And fourthly, maintaining public trust, as public trust is essential for the smooth functioning of government institutions. In our next news, the International Union for Conservation of Nature has released an updated red list of threatened species. Before we look at the key findings, let's understand some basics about IUCN. It was created in 1948 and is headquartered in Gland, Switzerland. It provides public, private and non-governmental organizations with the knowledge and tools that enable human progress, economic development and nature conservation. Coming back to the key findings, the updated red data list says that around 44,000 species are threatened with extinction, which increased by 2,000 from the last year. Also, an antelope saiga that have roamed the earth since the last ice age was moved from critically endangered to near threatened. Additionally, 25% of the freshwater fish are at the risk of extinction, with at least 17% affected by climate change. Interestingly, this is the first global freshwater fish assessment. The list also includes 4 freshwater subterranean fish species from Kerala. These are in the endangered category Shaji's catfish, Abdul Kalam's blind cave catfish and Pangeo bhujia. In the vulnerable category, it includes the golem snakehead. Before we conclude this news, let's understand about the IUCN's red data list. It is a critical indicator of the health of the world's biodiversity. It provides information about range, population size, habitat and ecology, use and trade, threats, and conservation actions. Its category in the decreasing order of risk are extinct, extinct in the wild, critically endangered, endangered, vulnerable, near threatened, least concern, and data deficient. Herein, the criteria used to determine the risk of species includes population size reduction, restricted geographical range, a small population and declining, very small or lives in a restricted area, among others. In another news, according to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime report, the Golden Triangle opium economy has seen a steady growth in 2023. The UNODC is a UN agency which was established in 1997 for addressing issues related to drugs, transnational organized crime, corruption, and terrorism. The report titled Southeast Asia Opium Survey 2023 Cultivation, Production and Implication assesses the opium poppy cultivation in Southeast Asia. Herein, two regions assume significance. The Golden Triangle comprises illicit opium production region covering Myanmar, Thailand and Laos, whereas the Golden Crescent comprises Iran, Afghanistan and Pakistan. Let's have a look at the key findings of the report. The report says that Myanmar is now the world's top opium source after the decline in Afghanistan. Plus, a targeted assessment also found indications of substantial opium cultivation in Sagaing along the Myanmar's border with India. Drug trafficking as an issue poses a significant challenge for India's security. These include the cross-border smuggling of illicit narcotics, which are often trafficked from neighboring countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Myanmar. It can be a factor for organized crime and violence as drug trafficking is often associated with organized criminal networks that engage in violent activities. It also poses a threat to national security as the routes used by the drug traffickers could be used for smuggling in weapons as well as terrorists. It is also a factor behind corruption and money laundering as the drug money may be laundered through the formal financial system, undermining economic integrity. Also, drug abuse places a strain on the healthcare system. The personality in news for today is Togan Nengminja Sangma. He was remembered on his death anniversary. He was a Garo tribal leader from Garo Hills, Meghalaya. His contributions include: after the First Anglo-Burmese War, the British decided to occupy the Brahmaputra Valley. He organized people of his community from both hills and plains. In 1872, he launched an attack against British troops at Rongaregiri and refused to bow down to the British forces. He exhibited values like courage, inclusive leadership, and selflessness during his lifetime. As we conclude today's main news, let's go through some quick updates. Two bills seeking 33% reservation for women in Jammu and Kashmir and Puducherry Assembly have been introduced. The government informed that 10 public sector banks transferred non-performing assets of over Rs 11,617 crore to National Asset Reconstruction Company between January and November this year. The National Asset Reconstruction Company Limited is registered with the RBI as an asset reconstruction company under the SARFAESI Act 2002. Some researchers have built a hybrid biocomputer that can complete tasks such as voice recognition. In biocomputers, brain cultures grown in the lab are coupled to the real-world sensors and input-output devices. WHO has reported that 5 countries in East and Southern Africa have anthrax disease outbreak. It is an infectious disease caused by the spore-forming bacteria called Bacillus anthracis. Recently, Israel bombed Khan Yunis city after a hostage threat by Hamas. This city is located in the south of Gaza Strip, in the southwestern part of Palestine near the Sinai Peninsula. Recently, a skull of the ancient sea animal called a pliosaur has been extracted from UK's Jurassic Coast. Pliosaurs were large carnivorous marine reptiles characterized by massive heads, short necks, and streamlined tear-shaped bodies. A report titled Asia and the Pacific, Regional Overview of Food Security and Nutrition 2023, Statistics and Trends has been released by the Food and Agriculture Organization. 6 new countries and the UN Environment Programme have joined the ENACT partnership recently. The ENACT partnership, or the Enhancing Nature-Based Solutions for Accelerated Climate Transformation, was launched by Germany and Egypt along with the IUCN at COP27 Egypt. Before we go, it's time to put your knowledge to the test in today's segment of Test Your Learning. Thank you for joining us. We hope you have enjoyed this edition of News Today. To get the answers to today's quiz and to download the PDF of News Today, make sure to check out the links in the description below.